This last section is on advertising and price discrimination. In some sense, it doesn't really belong here because it's not a model of market structure like we've looked at monopolistic competition and oligopoly. These are two different models of market structure. Here we have two different topics, advertising and price discrimination. The one way in which they do belong here is that you tend to see more advertising in imperfectly competitive markets, and price discrimination you never see in perfectly competitive markets. So let's talk about what these, well, advertising, you know what it is. I would say I'm going to leave this for you to read for the most part. Whether advertising is good or bad often hinges on the question of, is it informative or not? Are consumers learning about products? Are they learning about prices? If so, then advertising encourages competition. But if it doesn't, and it only serves to do things like build brand loyalty, well, you might say that the consumer then gets more value from the product, but it might make entry more difficult for another firm. And so in that case, advertising could serve to lower competition. So this is an open debate, and probably different cases will result in different answers. I think another more interesting topic here is price discrimination. And so price discrimination is a situation where a firm charges different prices for the same good or service to different customers. And we see this all the time. In fact, one of the main jobs of marketing departments is to figure out how to price discriminate. It sounds like it's a bad thing, right? Discrimination in most contexts that we think of is a bad thing. But in terms of price discrimination, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Well, let's talk about, again, what does it mean? Well, you're charging different prices for the same good or service. So there are many examples. What about a movie ticket? If you are a senior citizen and you show your ID, you get a lower price. But you get to sit wherever you want, right? And so you have access to the same seats that someone who pays full price does. Why do you think the firms do this? Is it because they want to be nice to the senior citizens? No, it's because they're profit maximizing. Senior citizens have more elastic demand. If the movie is expensive, they're going to go do something else. So if you only charge one price, you're not going to get any seniors, perhaps. So you want to have different prices. There are some criteria that must hold for price discrimination to work. First one we already mentioned, you have to have some market power. If you're a perfectly competitive firm, you can't price discriminate. Second, you have to be able to distinguish between the customers. So in the senior citizen example, you can, right? You can look at their ID. And third, you have to be able to prevent resale. Now it's possible that after a senior buys their ticket, they could stand outside and scalp it, but we tend to not see that, right? So I suppose if it really happened, the movie theater could figure out a way to, eliminate that. Of course, we do see that in other ticket situations, right? But anyway, these are three situations. Another example of price discrimination is coupons. And so do any of you clip coupons before you go shopping? Some of you do, some of you don't. But the way that coupons work is it allows the firms to distinguish between customers. Some people have a high opportunity cost of time. Some people have a low opportunity cost of time. Which of these two types do you think clips coupons? People with a low opportunity cost of time. But you can't, and they also then therefore have a higher elasticity, right? If the price is high, they're not going to buy it. But the firm still wants to sell to them as long as they're willing to pay more than the cost. And so how do you distinguish between the types? Well, a customer can't just walk into a grocery store and say, hey, look, I am a high elasticity person, right? I'm not willing to pay these high prices. So can I have the low prices? No, that's not going to work. Because if that did work, everybody would say that, right? Instead, if you're a low opportunity cost of time person, you need to prove that your time is not that valuable and spend an hour clipping coupons. So if you clip coupons, that proves that you have a lower willingness to pay for the products and a higher elasticity, you might say. And therefore, the firm will give you lower prices. But unless you're willing to go through the trouble of flipping coupons, they're not going to give you the lower prices. So that's a clever way of distinguishing between customer types. A third example I'll give you has to do with airline fares. There are generally two types of travelers: business travelers and leisure travelers. Leisure travelers have more flexibility, not only in where they decide to go, but also in when they go. Business travelers don't. Their meeting is in Houston, they have to be in Houston. So how do you distinguish between these types? Well, business travelers usually go for a day or two, and usually during the week. Leisure travelers usually go for more than a week. Well, at least they're more likely to go for longer trips, and they're also more likely to stay over a weekend. So the airlines can set different fares based on the schedule. If the schedule involves a weekend layover, the price will be lower because they know that more leisure travelers will take that. And so again, that's a clever way of distinguishing between customers. And generally, you can't resell your ticket because your name is on it, so all these criteria are met. And of course, airlines, there's only a few airlines. It's an oligopoly industry, so they have some control over prices.